the great state of Victoria has a net zero emissions target by 2050, and of course it's going to cause them a world of pain because the rest of the states, and let alone the country, is not headed that way. Victoria is. It's a bit of a go-it-alone target. Energy Australia was out today and said this could cause coal-fired power stations to close early and make power more expensive for Victorians. It used to be one of the cheapest states in the country. It's now headed to be one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, after these changes. So what can be done?
Well, I would say they've got to relook at their policies, which are potentially having the impact of driving those generators out of business. They can't compete with the subsidised renewable power that is coming on stream in fits and starts whenever the sun's shining and the wind's blowing. So it means they've got a limited lifespan, and the price rises as a result when they don't have they're not going to have the backup to support it. So the problem to me is that the Victorian government wants to claim the credit for saving the world from climate change, but at the same time, when it's pointed out to them that their policies could have the impact of actually causing blackouts through the summer or at times of peak demand, they say, well, that's a problem for the federal government. So there's sort of this disconnect between what the state does and what the ramifications are and who's responsible for it. So at the moment, they're bailed out by taking power in from New South Wales, taking power in from Tasmania. But if there's too much of a load and those smelters or those generators in the Latrobe Valley do carry a large share of the load, and they have traditionally been very, very cheap because they sit on a seam of coal, it will be the residents of Victoria that suffer.
It wasn't long ago, Stephen, that the Victorian government and the federal government had to put $1 million into the smelter in Portland because it couldn't afford its power bills, and this was to save jobs. David's right. If it wasn't for power coming down from New South Wales and across the hydropower from Tasmania, Victoria, which used to help power South Australia, would be in bad shape after Hazelwood went. 24% of the power has gone. 22% they say will go when your lawn closes by 2032. But everyone's saying because of the policy vacuum, that could even be earlier. So what happens to the great state of Victoria?
Look, I'd be concerned that unless there is some practical solution, a policy agenda that drives baseload power out of commission can only have one effect: either there are going to be blackouts or prices are going to go through the roof. And while I think David made the point correctly that they want the credit, I think they've got to be transparent and upfront and explain the consequences of this. And they've got to explain where the supplies are going to come from, or they've got to explain how high the prices are going to go. I don't think if you want to play the card of saying, hey, we're the renewable state, you've got to be prepared to be upfront with the Victorian people, because the consequences are very straightforward. And I don't think the Victorian government want to see people losing their lights. They've got to be able to see in the dark. They've got to be able to cook their meals at night. This is a policy that I don't think has been fully transparently explained
Why
yet.
the zealotry then? If you and I know that you can't bank on the sun always shining, and it certainly doesn't shine at night. You can't always bank on the wind blowing at the ferocity you need to power your turbines. So what's the fallback if you won't have nuclear? There's not hydro really in Victoria of any great distinction, other than some capacity in the north, but there's not like Tasmania. You won't have nuclear, you don't have hydro, and if you're going to run coal out of business, and you're going to run gas out of business too, because you won't have any onshore development of gas in Victoria. Where to now?
I think that policy mix can't be sustainable over time. I think they're going to have to either allow more gas to be used in the system if they want to drive or lead to consequences of the coal-fired stations going out early. I think that will be disastrous. I think that is a bad outcome for Victorians, and particularly for poorer Victorians.
Correct.
They can't afford to pay higher prices than they're paying over that sort of time frame. So this is where I think they need to have a look at this policy mix and work out which lever they want to pull to guarantee supply and keep prices down.
It's not rocket science, Prue, is it? I mean, it's not rocket science. We have this conversation all the time, but you've got one side who wants coal and one side who doesn't, and the poor punter in the middle who just pays higher and higher prices for the zealotry of people who are thinking somehow you can get away with living in a modern world without baseload power.
Well, it just seems amazing that Daniel Andrews is so delusional. I mean, he's playing a very high-stakes game because basically he knows that 82% of the electricity generated in Victoria was from fossil fuels last year. How is it all going to add up? I mean, what is he going to look like when suddenly his state is in the dark? What explanation is he going to give to the unions who back him about the job losses and the economic turmoil that's going to be created? It's just astounding to me that this man can stand there and face the people and say, I'm going to go for 50% renewables. And sorry, guys, if the lights go out, well, we'll just be bailed out by another state. Well, I just hope the other states don't bail him out. He needs to learn. And sadly, the people who voted him in need to learn that this guy is a loser and he's dragging them down into the dark ages.